I'm good at engineering product. I'm really not good at sales and marketing. And it's almost like I'm a whale in the sea when it comes to product engineering. But I'm like a turtle on the land when it comes to marketing and sales. And like the turtle can move, it's just hella slow. And imagine the initial team consists of a whale and a lion. Like that's totally different team. Yes, I could be a whale sometimes, but I'm a turtle when it comes to other parts. Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about being a solo founder. I am a solo founder and we got into Y Combinator in winter of 2022. And this is kind of the pros and cons of being a solo founder and how much, almost like a lamenting why I don't have a co-founder. I think being a solo founder has more cons than pros. And some of the biggest cons are a startup requires a huge activation energy. You almost need to boil the pot. And in the initial days of the startup, the pot is cold. And even after it's boiling, you need to constantly feed it with activation energy. Activation energy is also not spent linearly. So over the course of 30 years of a company, 80% of the total activation energy is probably spent in the first 20% of the years. So the first initial years are super hard. What does activation energy mean? It means that people are intrinsically lazy. That's not a thing on anyone. That's how I am. When I was an employee, I was lazy as F. And it requires the founder to constantly pour activation energy into the system to keep it going. And if you don't do that, people just kind of like carry the momentum. And in the initial days, there is no momentum. And to do that, it's the product, it's the culture, it's the people being sloppy with work, people not caring, it's not doing the right things. And also it's kind of not thinking ahead because to them, the paycheck is every month or every 2 weeks as opposed to this 30-year game plan. And having a co-founder just means that there are two people putting their activation energy into the system as opposed to one. And so that requires tremendous amount of effort. And the second thing is about just functional. A typical split in a startup requires about 2 or 3 founders. The 2 founder scenario is kind of the perfect. You have the CEO that does the sales and marketing and being the spokesperson for the company. And then you have the genius that does the engineering and management and product. So that means in the first 3 to 5 years of the startup, the person that's selling can get really, really good at selling. And the person that's doing the engineering and product can just focus on building the product. And now that I'm a solo founder, so I actually have to do both. And I realized I came from an engineering background. And for me to learn sales and marketing, it took me a long time to learn these skill sets. And I think not having a co-founder probably set the company back by about 2 years. And that is the trade-off. It just don't have enough expertise in the house to do both product engineering, sales marketing, fundraising, delegation, and build out an amazing sales team. That's a 2 to 3 years of trade-off of being a solo founder. So that's the functional, just the role aspect. The first one is the activation energy. Because you're doing the work of 2 at the unit of 1, you're working extra hard. And because the activation energy is not spent linearly, you end up working really, really hard for the first 5 to 6 years. And most startups, make or die during the first 6 years. That's what makes it really hard. The other thing is the perception. There is a saying that your co-founder is your first recruit. You're the person with the idea and you want to create a company. And if you couldn't even recruit a single person that want to join your team that is of equal caliber as yours, then it probably shows that you're not visionary or convincing enough. Then how do other investors expect you to convince anyone else? So on a perception wise, not having a co-founder is actually a con because you haven't convinced anyone to join your team. You're not convincing enough. So that's the third kind of con. The fourth one is, this is a superset of the activation energy. It's the sheer amount of time that you have or don't have. There are so many things that happen in a company. You have things that if you let it slide, it will set the company on the wrong trajectory. If you don't respond to certain messages, then people will make the mistakes and you have to correct them later. You have the administrative burden of filing with different, state taxes, payrolls. You have cap table, fundraising, customers are unhappy, product is going in the wrong direction, or that people are not really coding to standards, or that they are not creative enough to think on their own. Developing, coaching, mentoring young engineers and young employees, and also getting people excited about the future and the plan. All of that just requires sheer amount of time. Just take sales. Now that I've been in sales for I realized for the last 30 days, I couldn't do sales and engineering at the same time. After talking to customers for 4 demos straight, my brain is just fried, absolutely fried at that point. I couldn't think about anything else. So energy and time is what kind of tell me you need at least 2 people to do the work. I'm definitely lamenting of having a co-founder. It's just that now the company is, pretty mature and we're doing really well. There's no way I'm going to get a co-founder. Instead, I would just get, a bunch of VPs and sales and engineering and marketing and so on. But we have groomed people from the bottom up into managers. So it's a very interesting kind of startup trail that I've been on, which is if you don't start it that way, you kind of compensate by me learning the skill set, growing it in-house, and developing the skill set one by one. And the trade-off is time. The trade-off is 2 or 3 years wasted because I am the one learning the skill set. So that's the fourth con, which is the sheer amount of time. Now you probably watching this and the biggest con is probably loneliness, right? You must feel super lonely. People say that if you're in a very happy relationship, it's way better than being single. And being single is way better than being in a toxic relationship. And I fully agree. I used to think that being a solo founder, the biggest con is actually being lonely. You couldn't share the deepest fears and the happiness with someone that you cherish the relationship with. But more and more, I feel like that is not that big of a con. I love the team. I'm pretty good at reducing the distance between what's happening in the real world and what the employees should feel. Meaning that I don't try to abstract away the difficulties of the real world versus what they should feel. And you can say that's a con of being a solo founder where, if I were to be the only abstraction, I have so much stuff to take on. So I try to, remove myself from the raw sensation of how a customer feels to the back end. So if a customer has a bug, I'm just you should know about this customer's feeling, go fix it. Be like a mini, founder in your own domain. So at least right now, loneliness is not the top of my con. I do feel lonely. Let's just be clear. There is a little bit of a loneliness because I couldn't share it. But at the same time, there's immense pride that I built this being solo. And I was able to build enough of a support nest that I have the same feedback from different advisors and employees and friends. So overall, I'm actually proud that I built it being a solo founder. So these are the 5 cons. Let me talk about some of the benefits. One benefit is just the ownership. There's a book called How to Get Rich by Felice Dennis. Despite the title, it's actually a really, really good book. And it talks about ownership being so important. And being a solo founder, it means I'm not splitting my equity 50-50 with anyone else. And it's almost like if you want to be financially frugal, you want to look at the biggest expense item, which is your housing. And if you live cheaply, you can actually spend a lot of that money in everything else. the first order impact on the expense for a startup when it comes to equity is the co-founder. And if you don't have that expense, then it's equivalent of you not paying for housing. And you can splurge on everything else. You can splurge on food, which is the equivalent of paying employees. So it's like what you want. You can live in an okay place and eat out amazing meals every day and not sweat about the restaurant food. Or you can live in a fancy condo and now you have to cook. So I decide the way of being a solo founder and compensate very generously to the employees. So that's just a philosophy of life. So that's the first part, which is I do have a lot of equity as a result being a solo founder. In the long run, I'm super happy about that. The second pro, which I think is actually a really important pro, is it is my desire to learn as much about the world, and I want to be what's called a renaissance man, which is I want to learn marketing and sales. I actually am intrinsically interested in that skill set, because it helps me look into the camera more. It makes me think about people more. I'm not really like someone who codes every day. I enjoy writing. I enjoy articulating. I enjoy selling in not the manipulation way, but in terms of like, this is intrinsically good for our customers. And it is. It is an amazing product that improves their lives as it improved my life. So there's a lot of joy of showing what this thing is capable of, and it's something built by me. The one word that will come out of my demos is like pride. Like this founder likes their product so much that the joy just comes out of it. And so this is like a positive kind of pride. So I do enjoy that. And I'm not someone that wants to look at the computer every day. I actually want to not be with people, but be connected and helping solve some problems in someone's life. If you were asked me to be a CTO and handle product and engineering, even though that's fun, I actually will hate the CTO job, right? So like if I have a co-founder, I probably want to be the CEO. And if I was CEO, then I have to hire someone really, really good on the CTO and the other side. So it's pretty clear that regardless, I need to be in the CEO spot. And because of that, what I could hire is an amazing CTO. But what I pay 50% for a CTO? That's the question. That's probably why. Like, I actually want to learn the thing that maybe I'm not good at. To elaborate on the con of each two of the co-founders, excelling at their zone of genius. I'm good at engineering product. I'm really not good at sales and marketing. And it's almost like I'm a whale in the sea when it comes to product engineering. But I'm like a turtle on the land when it comes to marketing and sales. And like the turtle can move, it's just hella slow. And imagine the initial team consists of a whale and a lion. Like that's totally different team. Someone that can move super fast, like the submarines in the ocean, and then someone that will just spring ahead super fast on the land. But whereas being a solo founder, yes, I could be a whale sometimes, but I'm a turtle when it comes to other parts. So going back to the pros, I think ultimately the decision has been made. So it's hard to change the past. Now, going forward, the company is doing really well. So there is no way that we're going to add a co-founder like at this point. And the other thing is the pro of not having a co-founder is the following. I learned that to build a really successful company, you need basically 6 aspects. One is product. You can build the product. One is you are technical. Third is you have a good design sense, a taste for how things should be. The fourth is fundraising. Fifth is sales. And then 6th is management. For better or for worse, I actually have all 6 skill sets. I was an engineering manager. I have raised money. I have sold, not the best at it, but I have sold. And definitely came from an engineering background, so the first 3 are checked. If I have a co-founder, so that means it will not be a 50-50. It's more like a 80-20 or 70-30 split. I don't know. It just felt like an uneven distribution, uneven investment, uneven treatment. And that's not fair for them and not fair for me. So that is probably another reason, which is every day that ever passes, every day this company becomes more successful, it's harder and harder to do that. Now, I realized there are ways of giving equity for optimizing speed. And if my goal is to try to learn as much as possible, then speed is actually on my side. I like the slow speed where I get to learn things and becoming more of a Renaissance man to learn the different skill sets of life because I enjoy the experience of learning these skill sets. I also learned there are ways of trading equity for speed, which is one version is 80-20. 50-50 is the bottom case, then 80-20. The other version is give 10% of the company. But 10% could be given to one individual, or I can give 10 to 10 individuals, which is kind of the approach I end up taking for the really good ones. Or I can give 0.1% to 100 people. It's a different story. That's once the company gets bigger, it's probably going to be that way. So there are many ways of giving the same 10%. And I like that life. I feel like that has its own pros where basically I feel like I have unlimited equity to give because I don't have a co-founder. Now that I think about it, what world will I trade? I think the TLDR is I will trade my current world in all the parallel universes. I like my current world because I actually get to learn the things out of necessity. And these are the things I want to learn anyway. And second, there are better ways of giving 10 of 1% to 10 people, and that provide a better redundancy than give 10% to a single individual. So there you have it. I like being a solo founder despite all the cons. Every day, if I'm working super hard and I'm like, wow, this is so difficult. Why am I working on two things at once? And they are completely, quote unquote, require very different functional energy. One is sales and one is marketing. And I also have to work twice as hard to exert the activation energy to make sure that the culture is built and that people have a sense of chips on their shoulders. When the days are difficult, I do wish I have a co-founder. But then I also feel super rewarded that I have lived a life that is filled with learning and filled with opportunities to sharpen what I wanted to learn anyway. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe to this channel. I hope to get to 60 subscribers by end of the year. So thank you for watching. And that is my Sunday rant about having a co-founder. What do you think? Let me know. If you are a founder or if you're starting a company, what would you choose? Thanks again.